Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is Eags, and in today's video, we're going to be diving into the 10 most broken builds for patch 12.19, and some of these builds are definitely going to surprise some of you, but they do sound really fun. So if you want to jump on Summoner's Rift and have a smile on your face, which is pretty rare these days, but if that is what you want to do and you want to play test some builds out, I'd highly recommend sticking around for the whole video, because some of these even sound straight up broken, so you will still give yourself a great chance of winning. And guys, if you want to master any of the champions we talk about, any of the champions in the game, any of the roles, you know what you have to do, GameLeap.com. Our links to our website in the description and comment section. Our challenger players and coaches from around the world are uploading daily content for your benefit. So to get access to our library of content that will 100% help you improve, get signed up by clicking on those links. So let's get into the 10 broken builds for 12.19. Now, first of all, we're going to start by talking about AAtrox, who is kind of getting nerfed in 12.19 because Eclipse is getting nerfed. So the lethality in Eclipse is going down by 6. Even though you're getting a bit of compensation in the form of 5 attack damage, this is still an overall nerf, so your Eclipse spike on AAtrox won't be as good. But here's the thing, AAtrox doesn't have to go Eclipse even at the moment, with Eclipse being as busted as it is on this champion. He can afford to go Gore Drinker and still do very well. The champion, to be honest, is just innately broken, and that's been the case ever since Riot buffed Aatrox's Q sweet spot damage. He's really taken over the top lane, and you can see at Worlds at the moment, he is picked all the time, or banned, and that is on the 12.18 patch. 12.19, Aatrox is not getting nerfed at all, and you can just substitute Eclipse with Gore Drinker. So that's the first build and champion combination. Now, another top laner who lots of people don't like playing against, this is Garen. And you might be thinking, oh my god, a Garen build, like I'm going to talk about Berserker, Screech, Stridebreaker, Mortal Reminder. Well, you're right, those are the first 3 items, but what about after Mortal Reminder, getting something like a Phantom Dancer and then an Infinity Edge? And you're probably like, why am I going to go crit Garen? Are you trying to make me lose LP? Here's the thing, your E, your judgment in 12.19 is getting buffed, so the more critical strike chance you have, this is going to actually help your E deal more damage. So this is why going crit Garen is actually a viable choice. It sounds a little bit whack, but with PD giving you 20% crit, Infinity Edge giving you the same, and then from Mortal Reminder, PD, and then IE, you're activating IE's passive, right? So for Garen in the top lane with a Judgment Max, this could be one of the best snowballing builds in the game. I would be a little bit careful building it though if you're behind, because you will be so squishy, and when it comes around to team fights, you will just get one shot. So this build is really good if you are ahead and just dumpstering the enemy top laner. Now, speaking of dumpstering the enemy top laner, one champion who is kind of notorious for just being annoying to play against in the top lane is Tahm kench. Now, next patch you are getting buffed in terms of AP, and because you're getting more AP in your kit as Tahm kench, one build you can definitely think about going more is with Frostfire Gauntlet as your mythic item, and then Demonic Embrace. Now, why is this combination so good? Well, that's because with Frostfire Gauntlet's mythic passive, so the extra HP you're getting for each major item you have, Demonic Embrace, because it's giving you HP, it's a major item, so it activates Frostfire's passive, of course, and because of its own passive, so for all that bonus HP you have, this gets translated into AP as well. So for Tahm kench, your abilities, which actually scale off AP, they will deal even more damage, and Demonic is still nice because it is giving you a bit of tank as well. So AP Bruiser, Tahm kench in the top lane, very interesting setup, but I actually think it will work in 12.19 because of the buffs. Now, the final top laner to talk about, well, I'm not actually really talking about him as a top laner here, this is Nasus. So you can play Nasus in the top lane in 12.19 because the buffs sound ridiculous, right? So there's 2 ultimate buffs, so not only is the tick damage going to happen twice as much, so it's going from 1 second to half a second, and also your Q's range is increasing when you're in your ultimate, it's actually doubling. This is huge. So if you're going Divine Sunderer, Frozen Heart, Nasus top lane, no worries. That could honestly even be the most broken build because of the insane buffs coming in. But one buff to Nasus that's a bit more maybe intriguing and spices things up, this is the buff to your W. So the actual attack speed slow you apply to enemy champions when you wither them, this is scaling more off the movement speed slow you apply to them. So Nasus as a support, this makes him better against those attack speed mobile AD carries. So if we think about champions like Kalista or Zeri, any AD carry who relies on movement speed, that mobility, and builds a lot of attack speed, Nasus can absolutely cripple them, literally. So by getting something like Lucidity Boots, then followed by Frozen Heart, with all of that attack speed slow and the extra attack speed slow from the W buff, I think this, in the right game, could just be freeload. Now, heading into the mid lane here, we've got a couple of champions to discuss, the first of these being Fizz. And this one shouldn't take too long because in 12.19, Fizz is getting buffed, so the AP ratio in your E, this is increasing by 15%, which is significant. This means in the mid to late game especially, you will be one-shotting champions with even more regularity. So by getting a Luden's Tempest with a Zhonya's Hourglass, those are really your core items. Unfortunately, you still can't go Rocket Belt or Night Harvester because of the mana costs in your kit, they're just too high still. So we do have to go Lost Chapter into Luden's, but because of that AP ratio buff in your E, Fizz has to be mentioned here, just the way it is. Now the other mid laner here, you might not play her that much in the mid lane at the moment, but in 12-19, Kai'Sa is actually going to be more viable. Now of course, you can play her in the bot lane as an ADC or as an AP carry, and the reason for this is because you're getting more AP in your passive. So by going something like Nasus Tooth, Muramana, Luden's Tempest, that old build, even though your W isn't as obnoxious as it was, you're going this because of the extra on hit you now have from your passive, because it is getting buffed in 12-19. Now you might have to be a little bit careful picking this in the bot lane because you're not really a champion until you actually hit your item spikes and evolve your abilities. So doing it in the mid lane is probably easier. Then you can actually avoid the Draven players, the Tristana players who will be super aggressive against you. It will be hard to survive those lanes. Just be sure guys, if you are going to play Kai'Sa in the mid lane, to run exhaust into those bursty all-in champions. You can actually outduel them with this because you are a very good 1v1 champion. Your abilities are very good in a 1v1 situation, so keep that in mind when you play Kai'Sa in 12-19. Now heading into the jungle, we only have one champion to mention, this being Maoikai. Now I know the recent changes to Maoikai have made him really popular as a top laner, right? So by starting tier and getting a Fimble window, the champion is performing very, very well. He's at least an S tier champion in pretty much every single elo. But in 12-19, Maoikai is actually getting changed, and changed in terms of getting buffed in the jungle. So because you'll be dealing more damage to monsters in your queue, this means for Maoikai jungle, your clear speed's going to be better, and because you're actually like an innately strong champion now, because of the changes Riot made a couple of patches ago, this just makes it more viable of course. And specifically here, I'm talking about movement speed Maoikai jungle. So you can go Aftershock with like Sunfire Aegis, something like this, but I think it's better if you go something like Phase Rush, then with Lucidity Boots, and then Turbo Chem Tank. Because as Maoikai, the movement speed is so useful. You are a ganking champion, a utility kind of jungle. You don't want to spend all day farming. Of course, in the early game, you want to get through your camps. That's still important. This is why the buffs just make him more viable. So once you hit level 3, once you hit level 6, once you get your Turbo Chem Tank, you don't really need to farm all that much, and you should clear quickly because of the AoE from your Q and the extra damage this is giving you to those jungle monsters. So movement speed Maoikai jungle is something you can definitely consider picking and playing in 12-19. Now we've got 3 more champions in this video guys to talk about, and 2 of these are AD carries. Now the first of these, this is Draven, and Draven in 12-19 is kind of getting nerfed, right? Because Eclipse is getting nerfed. So the lethality, like I said for AAtrox, going down by 6 affects Draven as well. So what are we going to do about this? Well, I still think you can play Draven exactly the same way and still build the same. So you get a Dirk early on, then you want to build Essence Reaver. But the question is, what are we going to do with that serrated Dirk? Well, how about building a Duskblade? It sounds a little bit crazy, but on Draven, it's really not that bad. It gives you a really good damage spike, and you really want your auto attacks, especially with your Q, your axes, to deal as much damage as possible. You don't necessarily need to go something like Kraken Slayer or attack speed and crit. This is why Eclipse works so well, because the damage it actually gives you from the lethality. Duskblade is still giving you a big chunk of lethality, so in the early to mid game when you should be snowballing, this will help you snowball even harder. So Essence Reaver, Duskblade, Draven is the first of 2 ADCs. Now the second of these, it's actually, well, kind of a similar build. This is Jhin building a Duskblade. And I know what you're thinking, how on earth can Jhin build a Duskblade? Well, this would have been Eclipse, but unfortunately because of the Eclipse nerf, it's just not going to be worth to build the item. But the actual key to this Jhin build is starting or getting a tier early on, and then building this into a Manamune, because this will empower your abilities, which are just massive for Jhin. So your Q, your W, and then your ultimate, think about that with a Muramana, it just shreds squishy teams. You might have to be a little bit careful doing this build into maybe tankier teams with a lot of armor, but if that's the case, you can still get a Serylda's Grudge after your Muramana for the armor penetration. So it might sound a little crazy, but it is so fun to play. And if any of you have actually tested any of these builds out, let me know in the comment section and tell me how the games went, and before you lost every single one. Now the final build guys in this video, this is the only support build, and it's pretty standard. So this is Zyra with a Leandri's Anguish, and then Comet is your keystone, and then Scorch. Now, why have I mentioned this if it's kind of like just a standard broken build? Well, that's why. Just like AAtrox with Gore Drinker, Fizz with Luden's Tempest, these are just the obvious picks. I could have maybe mentioned Graves with Gore Drinker, or Zed with a Duskblade Prowler's Claw or Vex, with Sorkshoes, Luden's Tempest. Zyra is just another one of those champions. Because of the Scorch buffs in 12-14, because of the Sustain Nurse in 12-14, and because of the Zyra buff a few patches ago, so you're not locked into your ease animation for as long, this just makes her so strong. She's an S+ tier support in the majority of elos, so there's no reason why you should not pick her for 12-19 as well. And she's not getting nerfed, which is important too. So those were the 10 most broken builds, guys, for patch 12-19. Again, let me know in the comments if you've tested any of these builds out. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to leave a like down below. And until our next season 12 upload, this has been a